Oh yeah, this feels comfortable. I like this.
Not bad.
Up close and personal. I love them. It's the best way to be.
Right?
Oh, I'm gonna take these off.
I can't take these off.
Right.
Yeah.
Hi, welcome back to Unique Minds of the Okanagan. I'm Robb O'Day, and we're on location in Kelowna with Zach Taralson, a multifaceted musician from Kelowna. How you doing, brother?
Doing well, Rob.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you doing this.
Likewise, glad to have you here.
Let's dive in right away with who you are, where you're from, and how you got into music.
Yeah. Originally, I'm from Alberta, prairies, grain farm land. That's where I was kind of born and raised for the first 18 years of my life. And, out there was basically nothing of a musical community. And it was kind of a random fluke that I fell into music, kind of being in that, prairie farm, small town life with those circumstances. But there's something happened, I guess. I think I fell in love with music when I was like a toddler, basically, and just like the sound and of music just always just captured me, and that's the only thing that would hold my attention throughout my whole childhood and teen life, and that's kind of where it all kind of began, and now we're here.
Now we're here. So Alberta music scene, eh? It's an extremely strong scene now, but growing up, yeah, I can imagine that it's difficult being spaced out and trying to find musicians that are able to, like, especially young, when you don't have like a license and you're going to like jam. What made you want to move to BC?
Well, I mean, long story, I guess, but the thing is, growing up in like small town Alberta, I was very secluded and very kind of sheltered in a way where like I didn't really understand much about what the music scene actually was. All I knew back in those early days was that if you're going to be a musician in Canada, you should probably get to Vancouver or Montreal. That's all I knew. And I'm like, well, Vancouver's closer. And so it was always kind of a dream of mine to like get to Vancouver or somewhere with a strong music scene in BC. And fast forward a bunch of years, I ended up, detouring that, Vancouver was always the goal throughout my life. And I detoured. I went to an art school in Norway for a year, traveled Europe, and then I ended up living in Mexico for 2 years. And I was a full-time musician in Mexico, of all things. It was really weird. And when it was time to move back to Canada, there was no going back to Alberta for me, because at that point I was getting more confident and more momentum as an artist. And I was spending a lot of time in studios recording and performing around Mexico. So when it was time to come here, I only looked at places in BC. And I had an in with some friends to just come here and start life in Vernon. And a couple of years later, I ended up in Lake Country, and 2 years ago, I ended up in Kelowna. So it was like,
Practically getting there.
Exactly.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Norway. How was that?
Oh, unreal.
I can imagine. To be able to go from like small town Alberta to Norway and then being like a professional musician in Mexico. How was that experience?
Pretty trippy, to say the least. Like, it was an art school that I went to in Norway, so the focus was on arts, and it was the first time in my life where I had like 24/7 access to a recording studio, and that was just a lofty dream of mine up until that point of, because making music as a teenager, just figuring out how recording works, you have one SM58 that you spent all your money on, and a $40 software recording program from Staples back in the 90s, and a really terrible desktop computer that made the whole process was extremely frustrating. But so but even before I left Alberta, I was able to make a plethora of demos, and some of those, a lot of those demos are what actually ended up on my double album that I just released last year. So that double album I did last year was kind of like a cleaning of the slate. so to speak, of all these old demos that I wrote back when I was young, and you know, to be able to record it professionally now was just super satisfying. And when I was in Norway, I didn't really have any instruction of how to become like a recording engineer or a producer per se. Somebody just told me how to hit record and which microphone to use for vocals and which one to use for guitar amps, and that was it. And so yeah, evenings and weekends, you know, there was classes and programs and all kinds of things, but like evenings and weekends, I would just put on a pot of coffee and go to the studio and record into all hours of the night, and that was a beautiful moment. And it just felt like that was the first time in my life where I was like, had like no restraints on how to be creative. And it was a creative arts school, so there was like the classes even during the day were like how to break out of the molds of songwriting and creative thinking, and it wasn't theory-based music teaching, it was creative-based only. And so that just blew the roof off of what I could imagine, you know, as a creator. It's like, oh no, you don't just stick to this method or this theory or write songs like this and talk about these topics. Like, no, like go even further. Write a song about something that no one would ever think a song could be written about, type thing. And you know, that brought up some very interesting writings. And so that time in Norway was crucial in an artist's journey, to have, you know, teachers and mentors to be like, you can do better, you can write something crazier, you can blow the roof off this even more, Zach. And I was just like, really? Like, you know, I never had that kind of influence in my life until then, and that was wonderful.
That's the one thing that I hated about music class, was that you were taught theory and the structures and how you have to do it and how things work to each other. Like, it's good to know, I like to call it like the spiritual aspect of music, where it's like, you know, what works well with others, but to just let it flow through you is way better to produce music than to be stuck in that box of like, oh, this is structure, this is how chords have to work together. And that's why I personally drive towards like progressive music. Like Animals as Leaders to me is mind blowing.
It is. It's absolutely
What they
mental.
come up with, but it's like to go to a school that pushes you to be creative, I think is like, I think that's what all schools need to be. Well, not even just art school, but like just to push the next generation to break that mold, so that we can go, because we went from classical masterpieces written by one person and then symphonies playing it, to not being able to write songs because we're stuck in this like same structure of what sells to the radio, especially with like EDM and pop music. But metal, I find, is starting to do the same thing. Rock has kind of had its same structure that sells since the 70s. To be able to break out of that is difficult, especially to get it out to people and have it relate.
Exactly.
But your music, I find, is like, when I sat down and got to listen to it, it's almost like the first time I got to hear Radiohead.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? Like, where this is something special.
Thank you.
This isn't the norm. This is special, and just if it gets out there, it's one of those sounds that will last forever. And that's why I was asking earlier if you had a backing band.
Oh yeah.
Which we were talking about has probably been the biggest struggle. And how hard is it to find a band that is, I know, but for other people, how hard is it to find a band that's willing to play music that you wrote?
Very difficult. Like we were talking earlier, like, you know, we're always in and out of bands, and, you know, bands last, you know, a couple of years here and there, and they're always good. There's always some awesome, wonderful things about them, but like you said, like when I started to basically self-produce all of my own writings, record all the bits, I do all the drums, guitar, bass, synth, vocals, editing, mixing, I wear all the hats for every single stage of the process. It has a way, like the music is not just like, oh, I know my guitar part for all these songs. No, I know every part. I know how this every bit of it was created and crafted. I know what that sound is, and you know how to get it, and it makes it very difficult. It's very satisfying for an artist to be able to like see the full picture and to like compose the whole picture without needing other people to take those parts. That's wonderful, but it's very, very difficult, you know, to transform these recordings into a live setting with musicians. Like, there's a lot of good musicians. There's no shortage of great musicians. Even like right down the road and in this town, there's tons of great musicians. And I've worked with a few of them on my original projects. And they've always done their absolute best. But there's always this thing of just like, if you weren't part of that creative writing process, it's hard to actually replicate it in a way. And that is something that makes good bands really great, is that they don't touch each other's areas of expertise, and that they have ownership of that drum part, of that bass part, of that guitar. And so in a kind of a weird way, like I have ownership of all the arrangements and compositions of my music. And so trying to like give that to other musicians to be like, play it exactly like this, please, you know, and you're always going to get a different flavor no matter what.
Especially with drummers.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it can be a great thing though. And the experiences that I have where I've done that, you know, part of me is just like, oh, he's not playing it like the right way. But then the other part of the reality of it is just like, you know what? That sounded really cool with his flavor on there. You know, like just keep doing what you're doing, and we're gonna do the show like that. You know, and so special things can come out of it, but it takes good artists, good musicians to tactfully recreate something that I've made in their own version. So it can work, but it's a lot of work to get there.
Do you miss working with a band sometimes, or do you enjoy now that it's you and you have that full creative process? And
50-50 on both of those questions, Rob. You know, it's you know, as we know, being in bands, it's hard to hold a band together, and sometimes it's big dramatic things, and sometimes it's just scheduling and people's lives, and we all have to run our lives according to our needs, you know. And so I don't miss that element of being in a band where you have to constantly juggle and I mean, basically you have to in a way like be in each other's space way more than you would naturally choose to, and
that's a good way to put it.
It can create incredible friendships, incredible bonds, and that's when a band actually starts to take off. I think is when that bond, that brotherhood, or that thing happens in a band, and like I do miss that.
Weird,
it's hard.
like telepathical aspect where all like eyes are closed and you just flow with it.
Yes,
that's what I love about music, and
Yeah.
it's very hard to find musicians that you have that with. Like I can say Norm, Andy, JP, and Harley are probably a handful of the only musicians that I've ever worked with that like to this day I'm like, they mentally understand where I'm going.
Yes.
Like there's no like, oh, this is what the song is like. It's just they hear it and they're like, I already know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is a very empowering feeling when you have that. But it also is like very hard, very limited as well, because it can only last for so long. Right. Even with big bands, right? Like chemistry changes as people grow, and I think that's where like music being recorded is kind of like how giving birth to a child. It's always going to be there, 100%. And you get to enjoy it whether or not you're with the other parent, for example, right? Like that's the baby, and you all love it whether or not you talk. And music is one of, I think, the only arts where it's like you have a handful of people diving into something, right? Like painters, it's usually just one. You know, sculptors, it's usually just one person. It's like music is a total. This is why I like to cover musicians and Kelowna's musicians mainly, because the amount of talent per capita in Kelowna versus other cities is probably higher than anything in my mind. What doesn't even matter what genre you're touching. There is so much hidden talent here, and it's just that the That's not the city, but there's a massive lack of venues, and because the industry is so flooded right now with like two venues who are booking metal, a handful of doing like EDM and hip hop, but they also are two of the same venues. We're flooding the market, and there's a lack of interest in shows right now, I'm noticing. And I think that just stems from like our scene having so much talent that it's like if you were in a different city, you wouldn't have a show every night of a stacked lineup.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it kind of makes it hard too when you're not only trying to write and find musicians to work with, and they are in 4 other bands, but it's also hard to
Which is often the case in Kelowna. I find,
exactly,
too.
especially drummers, right? Like if you're a drummer, you're probably in 4 bands. Like there's
Yeah.
memes about it for a reason,
Yeah.
and it's because it's the hardest instrument to find a good drummer.
Yeah.
Like people can drum, but not everyone's a good drummer who can understand like, oh, this is time,
Yeah.
which is a
Yeah.
very key thing. What's been, besides finding members, what's been your biggest struggle point going from, well, I guess you've always written solo music, but with the double disc that you did, the double album, what was your biggest challenge? Because you were bringing in old songs
Yeah.
as well. And I'm like, I can't even memorize guitar from a year ago unless I'm playing it every
Yeah.
week.
Yeah, that was going back. A lot of the songs on that double album were 20 years old. 21, I think the oldest one was.
Wow.
And those are going back to the one SM58 microphone and basic recording gear. Like going back to those, and like somehow throughout my life, like those demos survived, and the notebooks where I wrote them down survived. And so I had all the structure in front of me, even if I couldn't remember them. And so it was like months of just going through demos and notebooks to like bring these old songs back to life, and then start to like re-demo them from scratch again, and then build and build. It took, upwards of 3 years or more, and to get it all done. And I mean, not only the work was challenging, but like, I don't know, there's so many challenges as an artist, I don't know which one to actually even pick. You know, like finances are a huge challenge. And I've always felt like every project I begin, I see what it could be if it was like well funded or just scraping by. And so, you know, the trick is to like get the best piece of art where you feel like as an artist you're not compromising with as much money as you can put into it. But sometimes once you get into the thick of it, it becomes way more not about the money, and it becomes about like what you're doing as an artist. And like you're up at 3 a.m. adjusting the reverb on the snare drum just because you can't sleep without knowing that is going to be perfect when the album comes out. And it's madness. It's absolute madness sometimes. And it's an insanity that you have to learn how to embrace. And if you don't know how to embrace that, it becomes very real. Once you get into the thick of, especially like that album has like 30 songs on it. And so, you know, getting a single done is a lot of work, a lot of time, and getting 30 songs done was absolutely mental. And so, you know, there were some moments there, Rob, I'm not gonna lie, where I thought I was, you know, slipping. And
I can imagine.
And you know, those times either turn you off so badly to the prospect of pursuing this art, or they like reinforce you. And because I've been doing this my whole life, like it just reinforced like crazy. And like after I got through all that, I was just like, what's next? You know, like, and like this album I'm working on right now, it's another monster. It's 15 songs, and it's like half what I did with my last release. And it's still, it takes everything, but like I'm more resilient now, and I'm not having, you know, nervous breakdowns during the process because I'm stronger now through having gone through that double album trauma. But it's satisfying. Like, you know, there's that whole thing artists talk about, and I definitely agree with it. Like after you spend years on something that big and that important, like you almost can't listen to it for a few months after it's released. Like the songs are just living in your subconscious rent free for so long. And you know, so I had to like take a break, as a lot of artists do, and just like not put that release on. And I was happy to hear people were listening to it and reacting to it. That was nice. But I'm just like, what song was that again? I don't know. I don't know that album anymore. I'm taking a vacation here.
It just jumbles in your brain.
Yeah.
And the 30 songs is. I just did a 5-song hip hop EP, so I'm not even doing instrumentals because they're all given to me. So they were already produced. I was just putting vocals on them and mixing and mastering. But even trying to match up 5 songs, so they sound identical in the production value. Yeah. To do that over 30 is. No, I wouldn't. I can't even imagine. I was going insane, like you said, with just snare levels and like how far in the mix they are. Like, because I always like to look at it like a wall. Like if you're looking at the stage, right? Like your vocalist, you want the sound to be front guitars, and then you want the drums to be able to like wrap around everything. But it was like the snare was just like
Cut
dull
through the middle,
right in the center, and it just didn't echo. And like you said, reverb, spending so much, but way too much on it. Then you're like, ugh, as soon as you get in the car. Yeah. But it sounds good on one thing, and I can't. I'm not. I like to say I'm a producer, but I'm a composer, I guess it's better wording, because like I hate producing. I like composing music. Send it to them to mix and master. Yeah. It's definitely writing an album, because I did a solo album when I lived in Vernon. God, I don't even know, years ago, and I did all the instruments. Terrible production value, but the composure of some of those songs, like I think the best song I ever wrote is on that album. And it's a rock album that's themed around us coming to North America and the whole taking over of Aboriginals land, and there's like this huge fight between everything. So it's like a huge themed album, but the final song on the album is like a wrap up, and it has every genre. So it starts off really beautiful and rock, and then all of a sudden it's heavy with a rap verse. And then all of a sudden it breaks down into this soft rock with an electronic buildup. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it ends with everything. And you're just like, there's no limit. I was like, I want to do something that has no genre, but has all genres. That's right. So and that's what I like. That's why I kind of enjoy being solo over a band, because I love being in a band. Like you said, it's great. That brotherhood is an amazing thing, and it lasts forever. Sometimes it doesn't, and you do lose really good friends, which is a downfall about being in a band. But the music itself, to be able to like go from being in a band and having to do that to be, this is your baby. It is like it's like you raise it from birth, and then it turns into a teenager, which is right at release. Yeah. And then at release, you kick it out and you tell it to go get a job. And then you're like, leave me alone for 3 years. Yeah. And then it comes back and you're like, you've grown up, you've matured, and I really appreciate everything that there is. And I think that that's a weird way to relate children and music. But like, as a musician, I don't think people realize, like, who are non-musicians, who just like put the song on in the background and let it do their playlists and just they're fed the music, versus being the one who is like feeding the music. We look at it totally differently. 100%. And it's I guess like same thing with artists, right? Like painters see other artists' paintings, and they like are mind blown by the skills and the techniques they're using. Music is so like full body. It's not just like visual, and it's like it moves you and helps you. I'm
sure you would agree too, Rob, that like I don't know if there's anything more of a point to doing music or art of any kind, other than like, the magic that you're feeling, like the spiritual experience you're getting from music, and the ability to put yourself in that position of having for lack of a better term, like a spiritual experience. Like that's why we do shows, and that's why we capture things on recording, because we want to share that. We want to, like, we're a species trying to like share this journey of what is it to be human? What is human life? And I don't know. Nobody actually knows. But like, here we are, conscious beings, in these avatars that we have, and it's just like, hey, I learned how to do something. And I figured out how to do something, and I stuck with it, and I figured out that combining these sounds and these chords and these harmonies and these things, like, it causes an emotional response in me, and I can't explain how it works. It works though, and the goal is to like transmit that to the listener, and that's, I don't know. I think one of the biggest slaps in the artist's face is always the money machine of music, and the pop music and all the major labels just feeding us garbage through the radio, and just like,
I call it McDonald's music.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no sustenance to it.
Exactly. It's just yeah, junk made in a fancy studio, and so like, so we're competing with $1 million funded programs, entertainment, and it's just like trying to get somebody to like listen to an original song. It's hard enough, especially when you can't just like pay someone to go put your song everywhere and put it on commercials and billboards. Like, when you can't do that, you have to like we were talking earlier, like, you have to like trust your. Oh, you hungry there?
Yeah, apparently. Or not enough coffee. Jeez.
Yeah, one
or the other.
Yeah.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
It is difficult to get music out there, especially when you're fighting $1 million, $1.5 million projects.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's super insulting too. Like, how many times have you been like, oh, I just released a song, and your friends are like, hey, show me it. And in 30 seconds, they're pulled their phone out and they're already looking at something else, so they're talking to somebody. And it's like...
And like, I don't judge people when they do that.
No, it's a natural human reaction.
And yeah, exactly. And like, that's part of art. It's just like, oh, look at this thing I sketched or painted. And it's just like, cool. What else are we doing,
Yeah.
And it's like, and like...
It's attention span now.
Yeah, it's like, I'm an artist in the musical realm, but like, I'm not an artist in other ways. And so like, we were saying that like, as a non-artist, even me seeing other art, sometimes it's hard for me to like feel that spiritual experience that artist is creating. But I try to consciously, experience that, because I'm trying to get people to have that same feeling from what I do. And yeah, I don't know. It's we're all fighting for other people to like catch the wave or catch an experience of what we know, of what we felt ourselves, to try and like understand where we connect as humans.
Yeah, it's really hard now compared to like when we were growing up too. Before, people wanted to go out and embrace arts. Now people really just embrace it from their phones.
Right.
And if you don't capture them in the first 3 seconds, you're not getting anything. And that's the hardest thing, is now we not just becoming writers and being producers, because it used to just have to be a musician. You just had to write songs. Somebody would hear you, they'd want to record you, and then somebody else would want to push your music out. When you have to wear all the hats, it's very draining. It's defeating a lot of the time too. Andy says, he's like, naturally, I'm all stoked for my EP that was going to release. And he's like, don't get too hyped up, because you're just going to be disappointed. You know what I mean? And it's a reality. Like, don't hype yourself up too much, because in this day and age, nobody owes you anything to go listen to your music.
No.
And that's the hardest thing. It's like, it's an ego thing we have to step over, because a lot of the time it's like, come see me. But you got to give them something, which is... whether it's you as a person and they fall in love with you, which is usually like, that's what made me fall in love with musicians, was the musicians.
Exactly.
Like, I fell in love with the music, but it was like, I fell in love with the music so much that like, I learned everything about them. Like, I'm a walking encyclopedia of useless band knowledge.
Right.
That's what my friends say, because like
Yeah.
I can tell you the most useless facts, and if I would have used that brain pattern or potential to do something else, I would have been a scientist or something. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but it was like music was all that matters.
Yeah.
And the older I get, to realize it's just arts and that connection. And like for a long time, it was me chasing fame and money and like chasing nothing. Like even that dream alone of like thinking about it now, I'm like, it's empty. That's not living. Like what I do now, living off of my art, whether that's the video or music or graphic design, like I'm happy. I don't have to make millions of dollars, but like I don't have to go work 9 to 5 for somebody else. And like that to me, like success has changed
Yeah.
the older I get.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Like I've done performances in all capacities of like, you know, the coffee shop down the road to stadiums and like legendary venues with like big name artists, and I've done everything in between, you know, in different countries too. And it's just like what that taught me was like, you know, I don't think I've ever been paid so little as when I did the biggest shows. It was mind-blowing. I thought that was like my ticket to, you know, doing this,
Yeah.
like without limits, and walking away from like doing big, well-funded productions, and I was brought on as, you know, a bass player or a guitar player or something like this. I made nothing, and like I made more at the pub, you know, the other weekend. You know, made a couple $100 versus zero when I played the stadium. You know, it's like it's weird, and like, so it's a very fickle business. There's like, there are ways to make it, but it's like there's so much finessing and luck involved, and like it's a weird thing. And like, so I don't know, like the whole journey of like basically trying to do this for 20 straight years on a serious level is that the thing that I always have to come back to, and I was just talking about this the other day, it was like you have to, at least for me, I'm resolved that the music has to keep happening without any expectations of grandeur, of like this is going to explode and this is going to like, you know, like I shy away from anything that feels like any sort of like fame or viralness. You know, it's just like that's never held interest to me, and
It's
like
so icky to me.
it's a very icky feeling. And like, you know, like you're saying, like, you know, all these band, you know, musician details and like so much like useless information, but like I don't know, in a way that useless information has taught me how to live in a way where it's just like these people that, you know, I never considered my influences idols, you know, where it's just like, no, I've met some of them in person and they're just like you and me. They're down to earth, great people who live a normal life. And that's what I liked about all my biggest influences in music, is that they're normal people that, you know, oh yeah, he put out this crazy album, so good. And it's like, actually, you know, he's just like struggling with paying the mortgage and raising the kids. And having to shuffle a day job around there too. And it's just like, man, he fought through all the things going on in his life. He doesn't have this career handed to him on a silver platter. I shouldn't expect that either. I've got to deal with a lot of just real life things, as we all do, but the music has to keep happening, whether there's money coming back to you or not. And so I used to think the more you pay into a music project, the bigger return you were going to get. No,
Yeah, I thought the same too.
no, there's just a lot of,
It's just properly investing in your career, and that was like,
Well, exactly.
I wish that there were teachers for that, in the
Yeah.
sense that like, I wish that people like us who have had the failures and like the struggles of trying to create the career would have like, I wish that was taught in music school, not just the theory, but like if you want to actually make this a business, just like any other schooling, they teach you it, and it's.
yeah,
They don't. They like the amount of people who know if you sign a major deal, how scary that is. And I've
Yes.
turned a major deal down, a 360 deal, and it's It's terrifying when you're looking at that and it's like, oh, you're going to give me X amount of money, but I owe you that times.
Oh, it's terrifying.
It's terrifying.
360 deals are the worst thing ever
And
created.
it's scary. It's especially when it's like, this is my art and I'm not going to have anything from it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I'd rather just not do it. And that's why I have like some friends in hip hop who turned down major labels as well and like decided to just do things for the youth, like putting on workshops and stuff, and they're still doing it to this day successfully, and then like their music that they wanted, but they didn't have to give up their morals, and that's always been something to me that was like, that's more valuable than being a Jay-Z.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like the bands that I look up to that are just starting to make it big, like they've been grinding for 12 years plus.
Yeah.
And they're just starting to make it big. And it's like, that's, you gotta deal with that grind just like any other industry. Like you're not going to be a journeyman carpenter without putting at least 10 years in of building houses. Same thing as a musician.
Exactly.
Like it's where I was always confused in the music industry why they went for like the cream of the crop, these young kids who have no life experience and no musical experience. It's changing. The music industry is changing. You're starting to see like bands that are 45 and 50 blowing up now, and it's kind of inspiring for me at least, because I'm like, I'm not too old to be doing a music career. And that's like one thing a lot of people face too, is like, I'm 60, I don't know, I'm too old to learn an instrument.
Right. There's a lot of talk around the age
Yeah,
versus am I relative in the music industry still.
And I think that's just a fallacy that was like just pushed on us through the industry, because all the pop icons and famous musicians were all before 27. Like they'd have their full career by 27 and OD or pass away, and like, you know what I mean? Like the industry and people are changing. Like in general, people aren't partying as much anymore.
No.
So people aren't going out to bars to go to shows. So where do we perform to go to the people?
Right.
You know what I mean? That's another factor too, that it's kind of like, for me, I've started just realizing that our friends our age have bills, have kids,
Yep.
have work. They're not going to come out and spend $20 for a show. So if you want to inspire, you can't inspire with the same generation. You got to start going younger. So we've merged from doing 19 plus shows to more all ages this year, which was my goal for the past 2 years. And you see how thankful they are just to have music.
Right.
And they're so happy, like when we were going to shows as kids, and I'm like, that's why, that right there, that's for me is more valuable than anything. It's just like maybe one of them picks up an instrument and becomes the next Parkway Drive or the next Bon Iver. And it's like, yeah, I think it's just as I mature too as a musician, I'm like, what's more valuable? Like, it used to be like, what's the hardest thing I can write, especially being in metal.
Right.
But it's like, I want to write music, even if it's heavy, that anyone can enjoy, which has really been hard. Or like hip hop, the album I just did, it's a 5-song EP, and I challenged myself not to do a single swear.
Right.
Because I wanted to be able to market it to a younger crowd and be able to market online without any hassles. So I challenged myself, like, no swears. It was difficult because naturally in rap you want to swear, but I was like, no, like the concept of the album is healing, mental healing, understanding, and like the death of an ego.
Right.
So it's like basically what we have to do as musicians to get to a point where we are comfortable with ourselves and finally happy. And that's what the whole album is about. And yeah, it's just, you start to challenge yourself with these weird things, like you did with like a 30-song album. Like, I want to do a double disc. That's challenging yourself, and the greats do that. You know what I mean? Like,
my goal with that was to outdo Smashing Pumpkins. Actually, like that, man, that was one of my most favorite albums. And like, not Machine. Machine's got the Melancholy and the Siamese. It's my favorite album. I can't even quote it right now.
It's a super weird name. That's why. But that is
Melancholy and the
album.
Infinite Sadness.
Yes, Infinite Sadness.
So like, yeah, I grew up on that album, and like
2 discs.
Well,
and
exactly.
Everything.
Two discs. And like, man, I've been trying to like figure out how to get my double album on a 2-disc thing, and like almost impossible. I can't figure out how to do it because like the albums are too long. Discs won't hold that much information, and you know, and just trying to find those jewel cases are like super expensive. It's weird, but anyways, like I was like, so there's like 28 songs on Pumpkins double disc, and I'm just like, I'm gonna do 2 more, and just like outdo Billy Corgan on that one, and just because like that one was like so foundational for like learning, you know, learning those songs in my early guitar days, and just like, yeah, that was definitely a push, like, or like a challenge. I guess I kind of saw that as a challenge. Like, you know, Billy insisted on doing this, and it was absolute madness at the time. And double albums were not in at the time. And he's like, no, we're going to do it anyway. And that was kind of my idea too, because like, what is it? I released it last year, 2024. And it's like, man, if double albums were done in 1995, they are really done in 2024. And so I'm just like, I'm going to do it anyway, you know, just like, and no, I had a lot of fun doing that, and just just seeing it as like a challenge to like, just to see if I could push myself as an artist that far to go. And yeah.
I think that's what becoming an artist, like at the end of the day, it starts off, like that's the wave of being an artist, right? We start off like, oh, I want to play music and be big. And then it's kind of like, oh, I want to write some really unique music. And then eventually it's like, you're those unique artists like Tom Waits down the road. You know what I mean? That everyone's like, I love it. But it's like
It's
way
weird.
past your time.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why, like, Radiohead, for example, like when I was saying I enjoy your music because it was like the first time I heard Radiohead. First time I heard Radiohead was, the first song I heard from Radiohead was from Amnesiac.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've ever heard Amnesiac, but it's
Sure
a
have.
really, like, so Packed, I think it's called Packed Titan, sardine, like in a sardine tin or something. And it's just, it was the first really experimental independent style, like an indie experimental that I had ever heard. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
I was like, there's no limits to this right now. And
Yeah.
even getting to hear those songs live, they still struck like such a magic chord to the point where I was crying during All I Need. Like physical
man.
tears of All I Need live, just because like you're like, oh man, I can, it's here. Like I'm in this moment right now. And it's like, that's what makes me love music. And I love being able to like look at the crowd and like I was saying, like a younger crowd, and they're like, they're feeling that.
Yeah.
But for you, and you're like, oh my God, right? Like it's, I don't think there's words. There's no English word, at least, that I can think of that would ever describe that feeling of being a musician
No,
and
like,
performing.
I think Radiohead's one of those few bands that gives you that spiritual experience because because they, anyone who knows Radiohead knows that you can't just off the cuff classify them into a genre. And that's what I love the most about them, is that you never know what the next song is going to be like, what genre it's going to kind of sound like. It's just absolute freedom as artists, and I love what those guys do with music. And I think it's some of the most important music that's ever been released, my own personal opinion. And
No, I think that's valid, hands down. I don't think they're recognized as for how talented they are and what they've given
no,
to the music industry. Like, to be one of the, I think, if not the only or the second band to ever walk away from a major label without owing $1,
yeah,
that's inspirational too. Not even just the
Exactly.
music, but like they fought to be able to own their music, and now they're completely independent as a major band. That's a fight that only them and 30 Seconds to Mars have ever won.
yeah, I know,
Right?
super rare.
And two of those bands, like the other one that I'd say is like in my mind that's like Radiohead, that is that there's no genre, is Arcade Fire.
Okay,
You know what I mean? Like
Very interesting
every
music, yeah.
Arcade Fire is, you know, it's Arcade Fire, but it's not like anything else.
yeah,
And it's definitely a unique, it's not as spiritual, but it is very like, you watch Wake Up live at Glastonbury, and like that song could change the world
right,
if you had enough people. And like you watch how much happiness is coming through like hundreds of thousands of people singing the same chant. And it's just like, it doesn't take a lot to unite people. Then a lot of the time it's usually like music that does it.
isn't it? fascinating how powerful music is. And a lot of people don't even understand this, like what sort of power, how to describe this power in music. Like you said, how much power you have when you're on stage, especially in front of a large amount of people, even if they've never heard you. Okay, so it's like what you're saying, the lyrical content means so much, and
So much.
and obviously the music too is the emotional caveats to get there with the words. And the kind of power that you have as an artist is mind-blowing, and the majority of people on stage are just wasting that power on feed my ego, like just worship me. I'm just, and it drives me nuts to see that. And then when you get these artists like Arcade Fire, like Radiohead, like Sigur Rós, I love Sigur Rós. Yeah, they can command such an energy from the stage. And there was this one point at a Sigur Rós concert I was at where like he drew out this falsetto note for what felt like 10 minutes. It was crazy. And you know how when a song ends, people just instinctively respond and start clapping. And so like the song ended, but like I'm sure nobody in the room could describe why they did not feel like applauding, but everyone was silent and didn't applaud. And there was that space for applaud. And and then when they came back in with a song with this deadening silence, which sounded like there should have been an applaud there, like it just like he commanded that energy from the stage so tactfully, and he knew that people weren't going to start clapping out of habit because the energy shifted, and like you said, something like getting a crowd to like chant a string of words, and you can get almost any crowd to chant along with you if you make it chanty enough, and sing it with me, blah, 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 blah. And you can get people to sing along to almost any words you choose. And that has tons of power in it alone. And you can get people to chant awful, obscene things and hateful things, and people are gonna chant because they're caught in the energy that everybody is contained in. And so when you contain a crowd in that music energy, like you have control over their emotional state, their thought life even, and it can be used as a tool for a lot of good or a lot of evil, depending on what you're on stage for.
That's true.
And when an artist gets a whole room or a crowd to chant incredible like affirmations, like you said, it could change the world. And there is so much power in like put 6 words together and get thousands of people to chant that, and there's energy being released in that, and everybody feels it as tangible. You can cut that energy with a knife in that show, and I guess that's kind of related to what we were talking about earlier of just like we as artists are seeking to create a spiritual experience, and it's up to us, artists, to decide what kind of a spiritual experience we're going to bring a whole bunch of people along with. And that puts a lot of responsibility on artists. And that's why I think it's encouraging to see like 40, 50, 60-year-old artists kind of being a little bit more prominent now. They're more mature. They've been through more life. They've dealt with a lot of things. When you get kids fresh out of high school and you put them on a massive stage in Glastonbury or the H2, they're just kids. They don't know what they're talking about, and you hand them a sheet of lyrics, and it's just like, and then you have people like several years later be like, do you know what that song was really about? That was mental. That was disgusting.
Like Blink-182 songs, right? Like, it's true. It is very true. And there's like a very valuable, like, there's 2 perfect examples of what we were just talking about. There's Woodstock. Original Woodstock.
Yes.
Changed the entire world. Hands down. Like it was to stop war. It was to be love, unite everybody together. Then you have Woodstock 99 with Limp Bizkit. And he's staring there at this crowd, and he has the choice to calm the crowd down. He looks at the owners of the festival, looks back at the crowd and says, this next song is called,
Yeah.
in that moment, he chose negative.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's very, that just goes to show when you have big groups
Yeah.
and the power behind music, what it can do. You can either change the world and bring peace, or you can burn it to the ground.
Yeah.
And cause a lot of issue. And it is very, like, when you hit that point of realizing, like, as an artist, like, not just I want to play music, but there becomes this, like, duty in what you're writing. Like,
Yeah.
even with my lyrics, like I said, I didn't want to swear. Like, every single song in this last EP has to do with a specific thing, like anxiety, like accepting all the things that I've done wrong in my life, to people, to friends, to family, to myself. You know what I mean? Like, sitting there and actually harnessing that and being like, let go.
That's right.
And the song is called Catharsis, and it's exactly what it is. But it's like, it's not for me. Like, there are so many people who can relate to each one of those songs that it's like, I didn't write this album for me this time. Where usually I write songs for me that I like. The themes behind this were like programmed to be a specific thing, so that I can, when I'm on stage and I'm performing in front of crowds, I'm not saying something that's McDonald's.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be giving them steak and potatoes. I want to be like feeding them knowledge and
Yeah.
like wisdom of like how you can change. And like, even behind the scenes, like, all I care about doing is helping other artists constantly. That's all I do. There's been times where I've been like, oh, you always put Storm the Empire on. Well, yeah, like, if I'm putting that much energy into booking a festival, obviously I'm going to put my band on so I can enjoy it with you guys.
Yeah.
But it's like, I do, like, even our festival in October, 33 artists in 3 days.
Wow. Yeah.
We had to add a
Yeah.
day because we had 100 submissions. And like,
Yeah.
morally, I'm going through all these, and like 90% of them are friends.
Right.
And I'm like trying to build the lineup, the perfect lineup for the community. And it's like, I'm struggling because I'm like, I know there's going to be people who are mad at me and be upset that they didn't get on. But I'm like, we have 3 festivals and tons of shows. But it's like,
Yeah.
it's not for me. Like, I want to give Penticton that wicked festival experience that like we almost had in Penticton with like the big festivals that have shut down. But it's just like Kelowna has, it's so close to AMF. It's got Rock the Beach, our Peach, you know, like, it's, there's so many big things that happen in Kelowna that I don't feel like it's,
Might fall through the cracks.
yeah, well, yeah, it's just kind of like, it's taken care of. As we're
Yeah.
like, I've started to move towards like Salmon Arm and Kamloops and Penticton, and trying to get to like Asuyas, because the communities here like enjoy live music. I just don't think they're like, because of the way we have to market now, we went from like marketing with flyers and physically handing out handbills to like Facebook was the best thing you could do,
Yeah.
and flyers did nothing, to now the algorithms don't show anything. So it's like, what are you supposed to do? Do I pay for ads? Do I put flyers out? Do I harass people in Messenger?
Do I not do anything at all?
Exactly, right? Like, so it's we're constantly not only trying to manage the music and what we're writing, our emotional lives, our personal lives, but then we're on top of it, we're having to worry about business. We're having to worry
Yeah.
about booking shows. We're having to worry about, should people going to come to those shows, so I'm not paying $600 for the venue out of my pocket? And then a sound guy and sound costs, because it does build up. And I don't think that it's because it's not like everybody's dream. No one's going to know behind the scenes. Kind of like I don't know behind the scenes for building a play.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
it is very like a niche thing.
It's entrepreneurial in the greatest sense.
It is.
Because, you know, you don't make a salary, a wage, anything to do all this stuff. And like the goal is to like put something incredible on and provide that music experience. But like, you know, and yeah, okay, well, if it all goes well and ticket sales happen, there is going to be some pay to that. But for the average artist band, like, you know, you're doing all of this work with no guarantee of $1 of profit. And it's entrepreneurial, where it's like, you see that like, this is really important, this is really beautiful, what I'm working on here, I have to keep doing this. And you have to work at it with, you know, whether it's one song or an album or a festival, you have to work at it. as if it's going to be the greatest thing you do. And that's right in front of you right now. Don't worry about anything else. This is in front of you. Attack it with the most energy and the most passion as possible. And you might make a little bit of money, you might make no money at all. But then after that project's over, there's another project, whether it's another band or another album or another festival or something else. There's going to always be something else with artists. There's always going to be a next thing, and then you have to just like hyper focus in on that, where it's like everything's under a microscope, and it's like the amount of hours you spend looking into a microscope for your piece of art. Like nobody's paying you, nobody's doing a good job, and
if you get that, you're so amped too. Someone's like, dude, I really enjoyed your album. You're like, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, as well, like all it takes is like one comment, even if it's like a close friend or a relative. It's just like, man, that song slaps. You're just like,
honestly, it does. It sparks you wanting to do it again, all over again. You're like, I'll deal with all the BS all over again.
Exactly.
It is. It's a very valuable thing to do, and I think that music is like one of, I hate to say it, but I'd say music is like the only art form that I think could potentially bring unity to the world. And I think it's because it is the universal language. Like I always talk about it quite often, is like if I went to Africa with a guitar, I can jam with somebody from Africa. We don't need to speak.
Yeah.
But that like telepathical connection that musicians have is something that I don't think a lot of artists or people have. Like a lot of people don't even believe in telepathy, but I know for a fact that I have a telepathical connection with Norm, with Josh and Andy, because if I subconsciously mess something up, they know it's going to happen before.
Yeah.
They instantly know, and they're already a step ahead of it.
Yeah.
And like you don't have that unless you have a telepathical connection, because it's like twins.
Yeah.
But it's just weird, and you can't express it. But that is the magic of why
you can't even explain that to other people too, other than be like, join a band, stay in that band, create amazing music with that band, and you'll understand that telepathy is real.
It's true, right? Like there's something magic about, the older I get, is like telepathy is a genuine thing, and I've known it for a long time. But manifestation is a huge thing for me recently, where like just letting the universe kind of present something, and you're like, all right, I'll take it and go with it. Like, one of my biggest hip-hop artists, like biggest favorite hip-hop artists of all time that I grew up on, I'm like in talks with their manager right now about bringing them out to the West Coast. And I'm still like, what? You know what I mean? It's just like, I think the day I realized that the worst thing somebody can say to you is no.
Yeah.
In
Literally
my career,
the worst
like
thing.
literally the worst thing. Like it doesn't matter if they don't like your art. Like, well, that's the worst thing they can say is no. So like, I've just been throwing things out there and taking what the universe is giving, and it's just like everything seems to fall in line. I think that if people trusted that a little more, their careers would become where they want it.
Yeah.
Versus forcing it. Like you can't force, I gotta make content so that I get views. Like that doesn't mean anything. That's Instagram. That doesn't translate. Like that's views on videos. It's not people listening to your music and hearing what you're saying.
Well, it's obsession with
Popularity,
metrics. Obsession with data. Like you don't even care about the humans behind those numbers. You just want to see the numbers.
That's why,
And that's what I hate about trying to like promote yourself as an artist on socials, is that it's like, well, if there's not thousands and millions of likes, views, and all the things, and then it's no good. No good. But it's like, if I have 5 people like something that I do on social media, well, I know those 5 people. Those are all like good friends of mine.
Yeah.
And like, they believe in the journey I'm on. They support me on the journey I'm on in those ways. And like, I can not think about Instagram and Facebook and all those awful things, during my day. Like when I'm creating music and when I'm putting an album together, there's not one part of me that's thinking, oh, this is gonna slap on reels. And it's just like, no. No.
It's true.
This is, I'm creating something special here. Like I'm pulling something out of the ether who else, like, how many people can say that they can pull something out of the ether and put it into something we can hear?
How many people don't even know what ether is nowadays?
Well, exactly. the removed and banned element.
Yeah, it's just funny because it's like it is. I feel like that's what like I think there's like that huge. There is something there that is tangible but not visible
Yeah.
in music that isn't present in a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Like I've done acting, I've done painting. Film is something that I love, and film is itself is a total different thing. It is very spiritual, but it's visual. So like being able to capture a specific scene that can like completely change somebody's perspective is so hard.
Yeah.
And it's a skill that only a handful of people really have. Like I enjoy making content. I love talking to people, but I would never say that I'm a good editor or a good videographer because I could always be better.
Right.
And I'm always trying to be better with my projects. And like when you're trying to compare yourself to the greats, it's so impossible to want to push yourself because you're like, you're still, that's where that, like that thing, right? We're always like, we need to be great. This is how the greats got there. But we have to be like, this is where we're listening to Bruce Lee. Like you have to be water.
Yeah.
We have to adapt to the industry constantly. And this is like a huge thing that musicians have had to face since we went from analog to digital. We've had to do it since the 50s, 60s, right? So like the industry, all other arts now are starting to realize what it's like with like AI coming in. And they're also like, oh my God, I'm scared. It's like, we've been battling that since the day we started writing.
Yeah.
We're constantly battling
Exactly.
technology and how to work with it and how to evolve to benefit our career. And I think that if a lot of other people in industries kind of in arts like would not be so with it, they'd be able to like see the benefit of utilizing the tools that are there. And like there are tons of great tools that are like ChatGPT is an amazing tool for an artist, a band. Like honestly, if you're like the things that you can ask that thing are insane. You can quite literally ask it to tell you a tour route with the venues that will play your specific genre and which ones will give you a guarantee versus which ones will give you tickets.
Interesting. Yeah.
What band? Tell me which band would not think that is a great idea?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't even have to like go and Google for hours on which venue I can do or looking at other bands' tour flyers to see where they played. And like, it's the day and age we're living in is beautiful, I find. Like, I'm absolutely in love with the way we are able to together. You're able to make an album by yourself, put it out there with no overhead from a record label or worry about it.
That's right.
We have the absolute freedom as artists at this point. And I think that like a lot of people are thinking like we're being limited. It's like, no, we have exponential potential right now and no one's using it.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people are using it like just to say the wrong thing, but like this is where I think musicians are a lot like it's our duty. And then you have like a handful of painters who's like they find it's their duty to make like controversial art that changes the world. Like musicians, that is our job.
Yeah.
We're meant to spread stories since bards.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like that is our duty is to express what's going on in the world and try and make people connect to that. It's magical.
It is. It is a responsibility, like you said too. That never goes away. As artists. And I was just thinking even too like the drive to like follow through with that responsibility. It's like having this like mantle on you where it's just like I have been chosen to do this task for the amount of years that I'm going to live a human life. I better do as best a job as I can. And it's almost like you're working for your superior, and you always want to like report back that you got better, that your next thing you did was better than the last one, and call your superior whoever you want, source whatever. It's nice that our superiors as artists are not human. That's great.
It's very true.
But I was gonna say, yeah, like like I didn't know how to or how that would work for me to like just do everything on my own. And so like, 10 years ago, I was paying way too much money to go to a studio downtown Vancouver and pay thousands of dollars for one song. Madness. And sure, we got an okay song, but it didn't change anything, And versus like, you know what? Like, once I started finding out that I could just build my own studio, and like, I can't just like buy everything all at once. Like, I had to acquire my studio over the last 10 years. And then you have to learn how to use everything too. But the drive to like be like a good and faithful servant to your craft, that's what keeps you going. And it's just like, oh, I'm not really doing good financially this month, and it's like, oh, but there's a DI box I need, and there's a cymbal I need to accomplish the goal of what I'm working on right now. And it's just like, so sometimes I'll like, sell my couch just so I can upgrade my interface or something like that. And it's just like, no, that,
Phone bill can wait.
yeah, exactly. Like, not a lot of people would do that, and which they shouldn't, unless they're absolutely like, committed to this path. But that's the reality of being an artist, and that you have to be willing to be like, the art has to, in a way, come before your possessions, or sometimes your living situation. There's been some very, very close times, as an artist, because the music still has to be made, and it's like a responsibility that you can't let go of as an artist. And if you did let go of it, it's like you're trying to hide from God, and it's like, no, I quit.
Yep.
No, I quit, and like, you can't find me. And it has a way of finding you and being like,
it drags you back in no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, get back to work. It's like, this is what you're here to do. And it's like, okay, fine. I'll sell my couch. I'll sell my TV, and I won't eat this month because
music.
I accept this role, And that's the harsh reality of it, is that it does take a tax.
It's a weird it's a weird mentality, because it is like, oh, we've been put here to do this, and like I quite literally have said my entire life, like, I was born to make music.
Yeah.
Nothing else. Like I can build houses. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I'm not born to do that.
Yeah. Exactly. we can all do other things. But when you have a vocation, when you know that you have a vocation in something, everything else just seems lame.
Yeah. I think the biggest regret I ever have was giving up music for the time I did. Because I gave up 2014, I stopped doing music altogether. Moved to Vernon and like wrote that solo album, but never released it. I didn't release it until like 3 years ago, and it's still never promoted it. So nobody even knows about it other than like a handful of friends.
Yeah.
But like to perform and step on stage, it took me a long time. It wasn't until I met Dale and Storm the Empire, and I was like, yeah, I think I could be a vocalist again. And even the first show, I was like, I don't really know.
Do I want to get back into this again?
Yeah,
Like,
but
you
I don't
what
know.
it
There's
means.
just like, it dragged me back in, because I was like, it's metal, and like I can personally say a lot of things that I'd love to say to the people and like the world through metal, because it is like an aggressive music. As for hip hop, I kind of got to like tiptoe around specific topics because you can understand what I'm saying. But with metal, it's like, especially metalcore, being able to have like that beautiful clean singing that like people are like, oh, and it does get that capturing like, of emotion to just like wrench them apart.
Yes.
And then like open their mind to be like, there's just something very valuable about that I was like, yeah, I need this.
It's an energetic tool that like you can't say that thing or express that thing in other genres. It has to be metalcore to say this thing, or to
It
like,
was also
or to
right
deal with something.
in the midst of the pandemic, and there was so much going on that I was like, I need to say something.
I wrote my first metal song during the pandemic.
Right? Like I needed to say something. There was just so much, and I'm like watching the world go on, and I'm just
Brought
like,
out a lot of
I
energy.
have to say something, and like it just became this mission to like now get the band heard so that I can say what I need to say to the right people, and like which is the youth. Like I just like I've changed so much in the past 3 years, and I think it's just becoming a parent and maturing as an adult. And as a musician myself, I'm like, I don't want to write songs. Like I don't care about the hardest breakdown. I want to write beautiful music,
Yeah.
whatever genre it is. So
Yeah.
if you had advice for upcoming artists that wanted to start a career in music, but since we're always told that you need to have a backup and there's no music careers, how would you give them advice as to like the perfect steps to at least get into their foot in the door?
Silence the voices that say you can't do it. Well, not even that you can't do it, because you know you can do it if you're there. But I would say, like, don't accept anything, any doubt to creep in, and the worst doubt is self-doubt, and like all the external circumstances, like you have to like push those things out of your head, and because you can't control them, you can't contain them, you can't design the outcome 10 years from now starting here. You can't. And you're like, oh, you know what, I could be this level of an artist in 10 years if only I had $100,000 to start. And don't let that stop you, because like, no, you have no idea what you would do with $100,000 if that landed in your lap right now. Would you even be an artist in 10 years? Probably not. You'd probably be in rehab. And
Or a massive amount of debt.
yeah, exactly. And so like trying to project all those things and like know all the bits and pieces to how the machine works. Forget about it. Start with what you got. Like I said, like, you know, with whatever project we have as artists, you focus on that with all your energy, and don't worry about the next 5 projects. They're coming, but you have to just focus on this. And it's no different if you're starting out as a musician, artist, songwriter, any of the things. Like, it's just like, you know what, like, you need to just practice the chords. You need to just understand voicings. But more importantly, like, I never learned theory. I've never had a music lesson. Like, I self-taught myself all these things, and it comes with benefits and detriments. I will say that no way of learning music is perfect. Learn it out of a book. Don't learn it out of a book. Have a teacher. No teacher. It doesn't matter. If music's in you, it'll find a way out. And you know, that's why I've never been able to teach people music, because I found it myself, and nobody showed me how to get here. And so I can't tell somebody with authority, do exactly what I did, take this path, because I don't know, I can't explain the path. It's got to be your path. And so, you know, I have this weird thing. Like, I don't even understand what music lessons are sometimes. You know, it just sounds very mathematical to me. And I don't know, it's like, for me, learning music was just about, like, I learned better chords and better voicings and things because I accidentally stumbled upon it. I just started putting fingers on frets, but like, when you play those vibrations, those chords, I responded to how it made me feel emotionally, and that was a keeper chord if I felt something emotional about it. And all the chords have some type of purpose and place. They all do, and it's infinite amount of possibilities. And so, you ever notice that too? Like, you know, some artists, it's like, man, 90% of their songs are in G. And so, like, they found a groove and stuck to it. And like, some of my most influential bands growing up when I was learning guitar were not playing the regular 7 chords on Cowboy Corner. Like, they were playing all these, you know, because I grew up like listening to like alternative and indie and punk and all these underground scenes. Like, all my most influential bands, you will never have heard of them in your entire life. And they're so underground, nobody can even find them, some of them, and you know. And so, like, but the chords that they were using were like so ahead of their time. And like, it's like a lot of alternative and indie is becoming trendy and popular again now. And, you know, back when I started playing guitar, you know, I I had to have a Fender Jazzmaster, because that's what my biggest influences were using. And these bands were nobodies. Like, nobody knew who these bands were, but they were making all this crazy, wonderful music just basically in the shadows, not getting paid for it either, and they found their voice, and so that's the most important thing. Starting out is like, you have to find your voice, and for me that was doing weird chords. That was, not sticking to what the theory books say. That's just like, just play this, this chord that has just tons of dissonance because it made you feel emotional about something. I was able to write a song about this thing that was bothering me, or something like that. I was able to work through something because I found one chord that had dissonance or beauty or a particular combination of harmony in it. And it's just like, ooh, that was soothing, or that was aggression coming out, and dealt with some aggression through, drop D things. And like, everything has a purpose. And that's the thing. Music will be, playing music, being an artist, it's not always about what you're doing, as if you are this thing that are creating a thing. It's just like, sometimes the music is creating you. Mm-hmm. And the longer you get into this, you'll understand that you're dealing with another entity here, that it's an exchange now, that there's in and out and in and out. And it's just like, I respect music, and because music respects me. And when I level up, music level ups with me. And it's this perfect mirror, it's this perfect way of understanding myself and my place in human life, that if I go this way, the music comes this way with me. And if I try and, get too proud of myself, or, too egotistical about anything, it's like when you've hurt your best friend, and you're like, I need to apologize. It's kind of like, there's a relationship to music at this point. But that relationship always has to start somewhere, and it starts when you first grab your instrument or whatever it is. If it's singing, there's a connection there that sometimes it's about you and sometimes it's not about you. And as you mature that relationship with music of your choosing, the relationship becomes this partnership, and it becomes it becomes your best friend, your ally. And this thing that will always sit and talk with you. And it's like a counselor, it's like a therapist it's like, I'm not afraid to go there if you aren't. You want to go there? I'll go there with you. And it loves you that way. And that's what, I don't know, for me there's not been anything more worthwhile of my time than music to like spend my time doing.
Well, I want to thank you so much for doing this. It's been an amazing conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A lot of, I like to call them magic moments, where like key things that you say, they're like, those are things that could change a musician's perspective. And not even just a young musician, but like somebody who's been doing it for 60 years. So
Exactly.
I definitely want to thank you for doing this.
My pleasure, Rob.
And we'll catch you guys next time.
Awesome.